a trophy.
We did it. We did it. Okay. Friggin'. This is part 2.
Get the energy up for
Part
my
2.
list.
Yeah,
Don't tank the episode by doing low energy. So
What are
nobody
you
agrees
talking
with me.
about?
Yeah,
Is this about fucking teenager games or what, bro?
teenager games. Yeah, kid stuff.
Kid stuff. No, we're talking about what we think are the best eras of video games. In the last episode, part 1, I said it was the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era. Also Dreamcast, I threw in there too. Believe that's the 7th generation. Still haven't looked it up. Think it's that.
You promised.
Yeah. No, I didn't. That's not true. Well, real quick, because I'm in control of the spaceship, 2 more points I forgot to bring out.
No, you're stepping all over my content.
In a second.
Oh,
So
this guy.
that was the PS2 era. Was the final era where you could buy a game off the shelf and it worked. There were no day 1 patches. Fuck that shit. That's point number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Point number 2 is that it was also the last era where importing video games was a thing. Now everything comes out like globally. Back then there was this like whole layer of mystery. Like you would read about a game.
True? Are there games that because you're a Japan guy?
Yeah.
Is there stuff? Isn't there stuff that just stays in Japan now? That's not a thing?
There is, but like it's such a small number compared to the in the past. There's like and most of those games do come out here, but digitally. Like if you want, like say I'm a big Fatal Frame guy.
Yeah.
If I want physical copies of the newer Fatal Frame games, I have to import those. But I can download them all day long on the American stores, no problem. But yeah, that's the other thing too. Like that is a big one for me. Like the era of like mystery being behind stuff, or like reading about games that you can't access and you had to jump through hoops to get. I love that kind of shit. It's like, you know, one of the main reasons why I'm into this stupid hobby is that specific thing, and that went away after that generation. So
and doesn't exist.
it
now.
doesn't really exist at all anymore.
There is something cool when you showed me, was it Odama?
Yeah.
And there's like a microphone hooked to that. That feels like it. That's pretty. That was a niche product.
Oh yeah.
Right, and a niche game.
Yes, totally. And it's a miracle that came out in America to begin with, but it
Yeah.
did. So anyway, that's it. That's all I wanted to say, because those are 2 important ones that I neglected to say, and now I'm done. I will give you the floor, and you can try to limp up this ladder to defeat my era, and I don't think you can, but try.
So you think that the era that I'm going to say is the current era? That's what I think you think.
That you are thinking exactly what I am thinking. That
Yeah.
yes.
And I'm not.
What the?
And I was planning on doing that.
Yeah.
Because I think we've had an argument, or what spurred the
Well,
genesis.
full
of this
disclosures,
episode.
we've totally had this debate before.
Yeah, well,
but we
like
wanted to
once,
do it.
but-
We wanted to do it for you, the people.
Yeah. And so when I went to start doing the research to support my argument, I started not believing in my own argument.
That's awesome.
So as it turns out, I do. So this is an off air. We're talking about like best versus favorite.
Yeah.
This is my favorite era of games is right now.
Okay.
But most of the reason is because throughout from basically the point of high school onwards, I was distracted with women, law school, or just a lack of money or travel or whatever stuff gets in the way, having kids.
I definitely wasn't distracted by women, though. Just need to throw that. That wasn't me. That wasn't me, gang. I was distracted by Odama and Cubivore. Definitely not women.
You made the right choice, Brian.
We agree.
So this era is my favorite because it's the era where I had enough money to get a PlayStation and to get an Xbox at launch and to play PC games. I do not have enough time to play them as much as I want, but I have more time to play them than what I've had in previous generations.
Definitely.
So I
can vouch for that as a friend.
I'm just having an absolute blast playing all these games. And then in previous generations, when I had enough time to play something, I would play one friggin' game. And it was either a competitive RTS game or it was or WoW.
Yeah.
And so that's not the way God intended us to play video games.
No, absolutely not.
So now I really love this era because it's just like, just give me all this content. There's like just so much stuff out
the
there.
accessibility of it's tough to argue against the accessibility of today.
And then to get games going backwards. Like
Yeah.
when we've talked about the Switch, right? The Switch ended up porting a bunch of Wii U games over to the Switch,
Yeah.
and then the Switch, so you get basically double the
one
amount of
the one
games.
thing that you can't take away from Microsoft is they're so good at backwards compatibility compatibility compared to the other two.
Yeah.
It's one of my main reasons of keeping my Series X, actually, is that it is so robust in its backwards compatibility.
So Game Pass is a very unique way to have access to a whole bunch
Yeah.
of like really fun games, including like some really big hits that you can get day one.
Yeah.
You know, it's a big deal. And then the Switch has added portability to the console palette, and then the Steam Deck has come out, and then so now portability is actually a thing in the way that it wasn't before.
Right.
And then PlayStation 5 is now kind of hitting on almost all cylinders with its first party releases.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the answer.
No.
That's the argument I was preparing to make.
I am waiting with bated breath here.
Okay. That's the answer I was preparing to make. And then as I started actually doing the research, I was like, you know what? The real answer is not this current era, which I define as starting with the Switch in 2017, continuing through present.
Yep.
And it's not your era, which you defined as, I think, 1999 through 2006.
Yeah, Dreamcast starting.
It is 2007 through 2013-ish.
Wow.
PS3 era.
PS3 360.
I know it. I know you're not thinking that I would go there because I wasn't even playing games.
You
that
sure
much
weren't, yeah.
So it's like, why the hell am I saying this is the best era?
Yes.
Not because, first of all, I just had the qualifications. It's not my favorite era. My favorite era is right now.
Okay. Yeah, you just said.
So if we were saying what's your favorite, yeah, but that's not fun because we're not really disagreeing. It's just like, this is my favorite and this is my favorite. It's like different flavors of ice cream. We're saying like what's the best era, and you're going to try and make an argument for best. You made the argument, made it pretty well for the 7th generation, if that's what it turns out to be.
Let's hope. I'm not going to bother looking at that.
So then I guess I'm making the argument for the 8th generation.
And let's hope that's right too.
Which is ironically a generation I barely even played.
Yeah.
All right. So first, why am I making that argument? Well, when I went and looked at it, I was like, man. So you had this is basically the entirety of the PS3 era. PS3 came out November of 2006, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. Through 2013. So I'm saying 2007 through 2013. So you have the entire scope of the life of the PS3, and there were a lot of really, really good games that came out.
And let's not discount Grandma's favorite machine, the Wii.
And you had the Wii in full bloom, and then when did the Wii U come out?
2012.
Okay, so basically the Wii, there was the Wii, but the Wii was a really, really big hit as a console.
Yeah, it was huge,
and it had a whole bunch of really good games that came out for it. And then I'm going to rattle off the games later on, but just to sort of set the table for that, both Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2 came out for the Wii.
Yeah,
those games hold up really, really well.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I picked this era is because when I actually looked at the games, my criteria, because we were talking earlier about what's the criteria that you'll use. My criteria was I was looking at games that were big in the moment, but have also withstood the test of time. Mm-hmm. So a game like, well, you actually disagree with this, but the original GoldenEye, it's like that was such a phenomenal hit in the time, and now you go back and play, it's like, whoa, this hasn't aged super, super well.
Yeah, I definitely disagree with that. Yeah, I have so much fun playing it still.
Very good. And a lot of those N64 games, in fact, that's one of the reasons I turned on the N64. I used to disagree with you about the N64.
And then you played it.
And then I was like, oh, yeah, what the hell happened? Yeah. These games aren't fun.
My memory's wrong.
Turok, playing Turok is like driving through like the San Francisco Bay at 9 o'clock in the morning or something. It's like 4 feet of dense fog. It's like 4 feet of visibility.
It totally is.
All right. So anyway, games that have withstood the test of time, they're like games like Mario Galaxy 2. You can pick those up and they look and feel and play just as well as they did. And they're some of the best reviewed games ever. So that was one of the criteria. The other criteria is how much new stuff is being brought to the table. Like part of the reason, maybe the biggest reason that you like the genre that you liked or the era that you liked is because of the creativity, the burgeoning creativity, all this weird
I would
stuff
say that's my number one reason why I love that era so much is all the creativity from up and down, like super high budget, low budget, all creative.
So for my era, there are new genres being created, and very famously and infamously, the MOBA genre comes of age during this time. I don't play MOBAs. You don't play MOBAs. I think we both basically loathe MOBAs. Uh-huh. But you cannot deny the impact that the MOBA genre has had on the gaming space. Incredibly influential, incredibly big. Some of the most popular games still to this day, all these years later, MOBA games.
Oh, and the whole idea of spectating video games comes from that genre specifically.
And the coming of age of esports as well. That was part of it. And then the third thing I looked at and considered accessibility to games. And you didn't mention this. I'm surprised you didn't mention this. But during this era, there was this sea wave of change in two different ways. One, there was an indie game revolution that you basically despise, but I'll talk about in a second. I think actually the games I'll mention anyway, you have a favorable opinion on, notwithstanding your other complaints about indie games in general.
Yeah.
But certainly there was an indie game revolution that took place during this time.
Started with Braid was my
That
opinion
is
on that.
also mine. I'm glad we agree on that.
That's a fact.
Okay. But then also, a little thing by the name of the Steam Summer Sales came along. And all of a sudden you could get previously what were AAA games. And this sort of it cuts both ways, because you said you were right about this, that there's something lost when you can no longer get a shelf full of amazing stuff anymore. Mm-hmm. That's true. And the revolution of digital content has sort of made folks like us who still like collecting hard product look like relics of the past. Yeah. But at this time, this is the perfect time where you could still buy games in a hard box, and maybe you would do that for most of your big releases. But there were releases from the past that you could no longer easily get anymore. Yes. That would become worth $5 or $10 on a Steam Summer Sale, and then you could have that.
You can't argue with a $2.99 game that you want to play.
That you want to play, and then maybe you haven't been able to play for a few years. I remember a very specific example is my sister gifting me Lords of the Realm 2, which is like a somewhat obscure, not that obscure, turn-based strategy game from the mid-90s or whatever. And I paid $60 for it in like 1996.
Yeah.
And then didn't play it and wasn't going to pay $60 again or even $20 for it. But when it came on the Steam Summer Sale for $5, my sister thought enough to buy it for me and then gift it to me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rhiannon. So the Steam Summer Sales ended up being basically a revolution in accessibility for games and allowing games to get into the hands of more people, more games in the hands of more players.
Super good point. Really, really, really good point. And you're off to a good start when it comes to this debate, because I didn't think of that one at all. I didn't think of like e-shops, digital storefronts at all.
And this was sort of the beginning of all that. Yeah. And that's one of, because remember, I went into this whole thing saying like, okay, why is 2017 to 2023 the best era of gaming? And then I started looking through and I was like, man, 2007 to 2013 is pretty good.
Solid, yeah.
And then I started thinking about what I was doing at the time and then why, the accessibility part of it. Okay, you also, so 2017 to 23 has really good portability, Steam Deck and Switch, obviously. But during this time, 2007 to 13, you'll know this better than I do, but this is when the DS is in full swing, right? And 3DS.
Yeah, exactly. 2DS into the 3DS.
And then
the PSP.
And then one of maybe my favorite console of all time, the PSP, was that was in full swing as well. So you had really good portability options.
Yeah, for sure.
You have really good portability options now, but those ones were also really good, especially because Steam, the PSP could be modified.
Yeah.
And then finally, when before I get into the specific games, when I looked at every platform that games were available on, and I looked at the best games on that platform, and man, there were really good games on every single platform during that generation. I can't even imagine how somebody like you was keeping up at the time, because it was we're having a good 2023 and there's like a lot of good games out, but it seems like, and again, I'll get to the specific list in a minute, but every single year during that era was basically like what 2023 has been, where you had Nintendo releasing bangers, Microsoft releasing bangers, or PC releasing bangers, both at the indie level and the AAA level, and then Sony releasing bangers as well.
And we know about, you probably have this in your notes, I might be jumping ahead, but you bring up Microsoft, and I think it's really important to this era specifically because like the 360 is without a doubt like their most successful console.
This is the one generation where you could say that the Wii won, but maybe they won.
Well, and the PS3 towards the end kind of caught. I think it did catch up in sales or whatever, but that took years. Like it took a really long time, and until it did. And I would argue like because the cell is so notoriously hard to develop for, and that's why for the first like 3 years of the PS3, a multi-platform. If you own both consoles and a game came out that was multi-platform, you bought it on the 360. End of story. Period.
Well, and to this day, if you and I want to play a PlayStation 3 game on the Sony store, or through the Sony emulator, it's like a full-blown PS3 emulator. We can't.
And it's not, and it doesn't work very good. Like the cloud streaming, we're not there yet.
No.
And a lot of these 360 games that are really, really good are totally fully backwards compatible today on a Series X.
My first experience playing, oh man, shoot, I forgot. What's the game where there's almost no gameplay and you're just floating through the world on like sand and stuff?
Oh, Journey.
Okay. My first experience playing Journey was through that emulator, and it was totally tainted.
Yeah,
because it just wasn't as good as it is when
I played Journey when it first came out,
which I think was 07, wasn't it?
No, it was 10 or 11.
Oh, okay. Well, during that time.
Yeah, it's during your era for sure.
Yeah, it's not even on
But that
my
was
list.
that game company, known as that game company.
yeah.
That was their third game.
Yeah, Flower.
There was Flow and Flower, and then Journey. Those are actually good examples of artistic indie games made by a really small group of people that felt really, really professional, and I enjoyed all three of those games.
I probably would have had I
had you played them
at the time.
At the
anyway,
time,
I played it
yeah.
after the fact. And then obviously, so I'm a World of Warcraft guy. World of Warcraft came out during your era, which is 04. But the zenith of World of Warcraft, because it did nothing but gain followers and subscribers for 6 years, actually happened during the 2 expansions. And then the peak of World of Warcraft is 2010 era. So that was right in my wheelhouse. One of the reasons I wasn't playing a lot of these other games, because I was doing nothing but playing World of Warcraft, kind of to my regret. On the other hand, it's my favorite game ever. So go back and forth on that one.
I want to birdwalk with you for 30 seconds, if it's possible, about what you just said.
Okay.
So as an outsider looking in, and I pick on you playing World of Warcraft because I'm mean, number one, and number two is I'm mean because I don't understand it. That genre has never been an appeal to me. I know it's obviously an appeal to you and dozens of millions of other people, but when you do look back at what you missed, and you just said that there's a little bit of do you lean more into one way? Like, are you more regretful, or are you less? Like, where does that lie when you look back in the totality of your WoW career?
I'm not really regretful, because the thing about WoW is, and I will limit myself as we're talking about this, is that it did a couple things that I wasn't getting anywhere else in the way that I got it in WoW. For one thing, the content was always updated, and it really was a vast world. I can remember the first time you see a zone there, and you haven't experienced that kind of vastness in it. It's 2004.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't believe how big this game is. And it felt, I guess probably the comp would be like Elden Ring, which I still haven't played, but the way people talk about it.
Yeah.
It's just insane, all the stuff that they put in
Yeah,
there.
it's huge.
So that's part of it. That was my first time experiencing it. And it was really something sort of magical about that. And then you talked about the mystery of, getting games overseas or whatever, and that part of it. That game was just chock full of mysteries. The internet is still not that old yet in 2004.
Yeah.
And so when you would play the game, there would be a cave, and you couldn't just think to Google or YouTube or what's
social
in there.
media didn't even you had Friendster-ish, but social media really didn't exist back
so you would get loot and be like, what the hell is this thing? What's in this dungeon? So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is an even bigger component of it, is when you're doing something, those early raids were 40 people. Okay.
Yeah.
I worked at a game developer, and every freaking person in that game developer, there's only 20 of us at the time, we're in the same guild. And then we had a bunch of people in other guilds. I lived in Europe, so in Denmark and in Northern Europe, and we're all sort of fighting for the same thing. And when we did our first big kill, which was the boss Ragnaros in that game, we spent a month practicing for that. So you spent a month on it, and then you actually do it. I mean, I've never won the World Series.
Please continue with this. Please compare you playing WoW to winning a fucking World Series.
Yes.
Thank you.
The visceral reaction when we actually did that after a month of prepping for it. We were doing practice for that about 20 hours a week. So 80 hours of practice to get the win.
I can speak to this personally because in 2005 I stayed with you in Sweden, and I remember.
Oh, that's right.
And I remember being asleep, and then you were not asleep because you played WoW, and that's something that you people don't do much of. That's right. But I remember being awoken at 3 or 4 in the morning to a literal explosion of joy because you had just won some crazy battle, and you couldn't contain your shit.
So I remember that happening actually. In that moment, I believe, if I remember right, was they released a dungeon, and we got the first 10-person kill of the last boss on that dungeon on the server.
Right.
Server first, and that was a really big deal at the time. So anyway, those moments, visceral. The multiplayer environment just makes it different, and there's nothing that I've done in a single player environment that felt like it got to that. You can have emotional experiences, you can be immersed, you can be really into the game. I just playing God of War Ragnarok is a recent example. I was actually emotionally moved by that game, the father-son relationship.
Oh yeah,
and all that.
yeah, totally.
But the multiplayer, it's just something very different. And also, I've talked about this before, but my personality is just wired in such a way that certain things I have a really competitive soul.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I want to talk negatively about this genre, to sort of pivot back a little bit, is that the general toxicity of gaming, which you talked about in your episode, it absolutely, look, I've just said MOBAs are an undeniable phenomenon in
Yeah,
gaming. You
yeah.
can't deny their impact. But also, it's like it's not all flowers.
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to be a part of that community, you're going to take.
You're
like,
gonna eat some poop.
Yeah, and part of it is just when the MOBA I play is of course the Blizzard MOBA. It's called Heroes of the Storm, and I've told people who know me that when you play that game and you lose, and you lose to other human beings, I feel like everybody is in the room pointing and laughing
Staring
at
you
on the other team. You loser. It's like a psychosis, you
Yeah.
know, like you like people take like antipsychotic pills for this.
Dude,
sort
it's
of
actually
thing.
so I do not play team. I play very little online games these days. When I do, it's like with you and our friend Danny. So it's a very controlled environment.
Yeah.
When I do play online games, it's fighting games, and no one talks on fight. It's one of the many magical things about that genre is when you play online, nobody talks to you. They just get in and get out.
And
Just
when me
fight
and
get
Danny
out.
play, we're playing the computer.
Yeah, we're playing exactly. We're playing on a team together
That's
against the
Ninja
computer.
Turtles against
Yeah.
the foot soldiers.
Yeah. So like for the few times that I jumped into like a team on a Call of Duty game or something like that, and I totally know the feeling that you're talking about. But like my reaction to it is like, well, I'm done with you. I won't
Yeah.
do this anymore.
Well, even actually, there's one exception to that is you and I and Danny played briefly Splatoon 3.
Yes. Yeah.
I couldn't handle it. I
Right.
wasn't very good, and I didn't have enough time in that moment to spend the time to get good. And so it's like I just didn't want to play because you could just feel it. You
Yeah.
could feel like
all the eyes on you.
You're ruining the experience. Totally. So anyway, but WoW is PvE. So when we would have a major accomplishment like that, it felt incredible. So no, I don't really have any regrets about it because I haven't had any multiplayer experiences like that since then.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I ever will again until I'm retired. The 40 freaking people were in
Right.
these raids
No,
all
it's-
together for one singular purpose.
pretty
It was
cool.
amazing.
So before you jump back into the area that you're talking about, do you consider is World of Warcraft in your consideration because it obviously took up a big chunk of this era, or did you not think about it at all when you picked it?
Remember I expected to pick a different era.
That's true, yeah.
And so picking this era is really because I couldn't deny a lot of these games. Like I haven't played through Mario Galaxy 2, and I haven't played.
Yeah, and you won't because Nintendo left it off that stupid collection.
Right.
What are you doing?
That's true.
It's so stupid.
I have a plan for that maybe. Anyway.
A plan.
What's up, YouTube? It's your boy back with some important criticisms and reviews about Laserdisc releases, but also like an update. I haven't been able to secure my old room. What had happened was as you saw, I was locked out in the hallway of the apartment for 24 hours. No way to get back into my AV studio / Laserdisc museum / bedroom / where I keep all my cookware and my snacks. I never got back in. Roommate never came back. I don't know where the fuck he is. I did find out that he stole a lot from me. Material items, as well as, like my heart and like emotional things, because of the betrayal. Look, things are looking up. I've been living out of my Yaris, which is pretty badass because I got like room for all my stuff, and I can still do these reviews for the community. Whoop! So let's just jump back into it. Positive outlook on everything. Like I've already, as far as I can tell, I've already landed on my feet. So there's no sense in complaining. So let's get right down to business. All right, so this first review in the Yaris is for a movie called Judgment Night. And it's like, as you can tell from the cover here, it looks really badass. You got Emilio, you got Cuba, and then you got him. And they're all badass. And this movie's fucking so badass. But like before I get into it, let's do an unboxing. Oh, fuck yeah, man! Look, life will hand you lemons, okay? Paper sleeves or lemonade? Write that down, fam. Hold on. Oh wait. Fucking yeah, CD, right? Laserdisc doing it. Oh yeah. So like when the cops came and told me I legally couldn't be at my old apartment anymore, when they were like escorting me out, I tripped, aggravated my neck. Luckily I covered California, free, scot-free. And then I burned my hands on my hot plate. So Judgment Night, starring Emilio and Cuba and Stephen Dorff, I don't know. It all takes place. It's like a night, like a fucking hell night. They're like, it's supposed to be like a boys' party, right? Emilio and Cuba, they're buddies, and Stefan's a bud, and they're like hanging out, right? And then like business like picks up. There's like a fucking maniac, like a killer out there, and they all like have to, avoid murder the whole time, right? And they do, spoiler, but like edge of your seat, like we won't even need the chair, the whole of the chair, just the edge on Judgment Night, right? So, this is probably my second favorite Emilio movie behind obviously Mighty Ducks 2, D2. That's the fucking best. But this is like it. So like D2, right? And then Judgment Night, Men at Work. Right there. That's the Triforce of Emilio movies. So I'm gonna give this one like a fucking 7,500 out of a 10. It's obviously a high score. It's a great movie. It's super chill. You guys are gonna dig it. So check it out. Smash a like and sub it. And I'll be back with more reviews for my Laserdisc fam community. Woo.
So, but there's a number of the games from this era that I haven't played myself because I was playing WoW.
Right.
But I nevertheless recognize as some of the best games ever. I've heard you speak about them. I've seen their impact and influence. I've seen the videos of them to see how they hold up over time.
Like Heavy Rain.
So I actually have that on my negative. I have that on my negative list.
Yes.
Like why I might not be right, and it's like, well, Heavy Rain came out during.
It's all
this
written
time.
in all caps. Heavy Rain.
It's so good. But we really do know each other that well. Yeah, I literally had that as like one of the names. It's like Toxicity and MOBAs and Heavy Rain coming out this time. The downsides of this era.
So cool.
Yeah. So, all right. So anyway, even though I didn't personally play all of these games, when I'm looking at it, it's like, man, this was all the consoles were releasing some of the all-time great games, and the accessibility of games is increasing.
Yeah.
And new genres were coming along, and the indie revolution came
started
as well. So let me go through now. I have a list here. I'm going to start with the indie games because these are games that I actually think you like.
Mm-hmm.
They're indie games, influential indie games that you either like or should at least respect. Okay, so you mentioned Braid, which basically started this all off. Braid is my favorite indie game ever.
So I like Braid, the gameplay of Braid, the look of Braid. I like all that stuff. I don't like the thing I don't like about Braid, which is like it's the dude went through a breakup and he made a video game about it. Nope, pass. Time killers. Move on.
This.
But everything else about Braid, I'm with you.
And I'm with you being with me too, because the story of that game, not so great. Not so great. And when he made his next game, he hired a professional writer to
learning lessons,
get away from that problem. And I've actually sparred with that dude, Jonathan Blows, a little bit on Twitter about things that he's absolutely wrong about.
Yeah.
Great game designer, not so great about everything else that he has an opinion on. I hope you heard that, Jonathan.
He did, trust me.
All right.
He watches.
Braid, my favorite indie game ever. Also during this time, Fez, huge indie hit.
Yeah.
Limbo.
Limbo's great.
Limbo's
Yeah.
great, right? A little ditty called Minecraft started
Uh-huh.
off as an indie game, very influential. Not for me, not for you, but you at least respect the game.
You have to, yeah. You have to.
Plants vs. Zombies, believe it or not. Papers, Please. And then
Where's Peggle? Why didn't you say Peggle?
I think Peggle was before that, though. Was it
No.
during that time?
Peggle came out. Peggle and Peggle 2 came out during this.
Oh, okay. And they're by the Plants vs. Zombies guys.
Yes.
And-
PopCap.
And then FTL, like amazing
Oh, yeah.
8-bit game, could have come out on 8-bit NES, came
Yeah.
out as an indie game during this time. Oh, and then the very first of current best developer maybe in the world, Supergiant Games.
Oh, yeah, Bastion.
Bastion came
Yeah.
out during this time. So, I mean, that's like a murderer's row of spectacular indie games that even a non-indie guy like you should
No, so
like.
this is okay. During this era is when I was playing these games, and like for me, like the Marvel, like the whole wow factor was going to PSN store or going to the Xbox Live Arcade and being able to download these things for
Yep.
$10 when they were $10.
Yeah.
Now they're like fucking $20, $30. But that was it was really special, and the quality of these games was really, really high. I remember I bought a PS3 pretty early on, and like many PlayStations, there's not a whole lot of games at launch, and I was kind of like relying on these smaller games to get me through to the next big one. So
And
all this stuff was good.
And I didn't have an Xbox 360, but you tell me. As I understand it, their online store was actually really good about putting these games up there.
Yeah, they did the Summer of Arcade was their thing that started maybe 2008 or 9, if I remember. And every single summer they would pick like the best indie games, and sometimes they weren't indie games. Sometimes they were like published by the Bionic Commando remake, which is excellent and has some of the best video game music you'll ever hear in your life. Can't recommend that music enough. You'll love it. That was one of them too. But there was a big promotional thing that they did every single summer, and you can like set your watch to it. There would always be really, really good downloadable games that were coming out every single summer.
Yeah, and so then that's happening, and then just like a year later was the Steam Summer Sale event.
Yeah.
And then I remember, so I think I told the story to you maybe off air, but I was on my honeymoon and backpacking through Europe again, seeing some of my old friends, and I got to my friend Stefan, shout out Stefan, in Oslo. And I was like, hey, man, haven't seen you guys. We're so exhausted from all this. And he's like, dude, you need to see what's going on. There's these sales, and you get like 100 games for like $10.
Yep. I remember listening to podcasts at this time and hearing, because I had a way worse laptop than I do now. I could barely run like Quake 1 on that thing. But I remember like hearing about the Steam summer sales, and then that was like when I was like, maybe there is something to this whole personal computing thing.
This whole Steam thing, which like everybody was mad when Steam came out, and like you had to install Steam to play Half-Life.
I remember all this.
Including
People
me.
hated it.
Yeah, I was like, why do we have to do this other dumb thing? And by the way, we all still feel that way. I'm a little annoyed I had to register a separate Larian account to play Baldur's Gate 3. So stop doing that, developers.
They're not.
But no, of course not. But 5 years later, Steam got the last laugh because they started doing Steam summer sales, and all of a sudden, all these old Steam accounts that like made sense to have them.
And now Valve is not a video game maker anymore. They're just Steam. That's
not quite the plucky upstart they were.
They just do Steam now.
That's what they are. So all right, anyway, so that's indie games. Those are all great games. Those games have withstood the test of time.
I totally agree with you.
You can play Bash, you can play FTL now. They're still great.
Fez
Braid is still great. Fez is still great. So, and then the Steam summer sales are still great if you're into spending money on things
that you don't
use. Yeah.
That's the story.
Well, yeah, which I am. All right, so Nintendo during this time, not to be forgotten, Mario Galaxy 2, Skyward Sword, Smash Brothers, Metroid Prime Trilogy, Twilight Princess, Donkey Kong, and New Super Mario Brothers.
And Wii Sports. You forgot the by far biggest game that they made during this generation.
Little thing called Wii Sports as well, on top of all that.
It's by far the biggest,
yeah. All right, so Nintendo really hitting on all cylinders, right?
Yeah.
The Wii is great. So now PC is on the indie side of PC is great. The accessibility side of PC is great. Nintendo as a console is great. Okay, so now we get into
real quick about the Wii though before you move on.
Okay.
The Wii burned real bright and then fizzled out.
See, you've said that before, and that's true.
Yeah. So if you were like a gamer and you had a Wii, like you also had either a 360 or a PS3 or both. So every once in a while, like something really cool would come out that was exclusive to the Wii, that I would always check out. There's a game called Muramasa that's done by Vanillaware, which is a fantastic action slasher game, beautiful Japanese painting kind of stuff. It's been re-released on other stuff since then, but that was like a Wii exclusive. There was a ton of that stuff that was going, we'll call post Wii Music, because Wii Music is the point. When Wii Music came out,
you said so. You hate that game.
well, I actually love it because of how shitty it is.
I was trying to give praise to Shigeru Miyamoto on a,
Yeah,
Miyamoto on a previous episode.
I
And you're like, Wii Music guy.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you love him too, Brian. Don't be chagrining Shigeru.
You're right, but I had to because like he was so proud of it, and that it's one thing to be obviously be proud of your work. That's fine,
Yeah.
but like, look, you can be a super genius all you want. That doesn't mean you're totally incapable of a bad thing. And Wii Music is really really.
I think
bad.
I know a little bit more about music than you do.
You
So
do.
I think my
Yeah,
opinion.
I'll stand down. I'll stand down. But yeah, I think with the Wii, like it was the biggest thing in the world, not just video games, but like
Yeah.
pop culturally. And then 2009, there was an E3 where they came out and they announced the fucking the Wii Vitality sensor, which never came out. They announced Wii Music and showed the infamous Ravi drums, who could not play the drums.
You're a drummer watching this.
Yeah, it was so sad. It was so sad. But it's gone on to become one of the one of the better Nintendo memes. Ravi drums, look it up. But yeah, that E3 was like, it was crickets. It was just they announced a new Donkey Kong Country game, which is great. And that begat Tropical Freeze, and those are wonderful, wonderful games.
Yeah.
But that E3, they had just that Donkey Kong game, and then everything else was just like Nintendo, like not really knowing what the hell their consumer base wanted.
They have these weird highs and lows, and Nintendo does, where
Yeah.
it's like they stop knowing what to do, and then they just have like a 5-year.
Well, Sony is guilty of that shit though too. Like what happens with Sony is like they crush everything, and then they become like with the PS3, infamously like, oh, you'll get a $600 console in 2006. Like you'll just get a second job for it. Fuck you. And you're like, whoa.
When did you
hey,
get
buddy.
your PS3?
2007.
Did you get a second job?
I think I did not. They did a price drop. There was two reasons why I got a PS3. Well, I mean, I was always going to get one, obviously, but I wasn't going to buy the $600 one. I needed a Virtua Fighter game to come out, and it did. And then they dropped the price for the 60 gig model, the good one that was fully PS2 backwards compatible. That went from $599 to $499, and that's when I bought it.
Okay, so I talked about PC. Okay, and then I mentioned that. So AAA PC games, obviously the MOBA revolution. I talked about WoW a little bit, and then on the console side, these are just, I think, console exclusive or exclusive-ish. Man, it's a bunch of. So the original Dead Space, both GTA 4 and 5 came out during this time. 4 at the beginning, 5 at the end of the era.
GTA 5 just celebrated its 10 years
anniversary.
Still selling.
Still selling. And for that reason, we're like 2 years away from GTA 6 probably.
Yeah, this
so.
is one of the problems I have.
with
the fact that they can make money off of that old of a game. What's the incentive to make something new?
Yeah. And then also in that same vein of if they can keep making money off that, Skyrim.
Yeah.
Right. Came out, and then they got 10 years of blood out of that from everyone.
More than that, because they keep using that same crotchety old engine to make Starfield's built on that same engine.
Yeah. Rock Band, that was kind of a phenomenon.
Oh,
sort
that's
of
a big one.
The culmination.
Although I will say Guitar Hero. All right. Guitar Hero came out during mine. Came out during mine, pal.
Yeah. Rock Band was like, I'm going to learn how to play drums. I'm going to learn how to play drums because it feels fun to do a bunch of different stuff.
It's
fun. Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Turns out I can't do it. I cannot do it.
Well,
I tried. It was
We'll
bad.
get back to Odama. We'll get those skills. We'll get those skills up.
And when we first got Rock Band, I was like with a group of friends and we're like playing. I was like, guys, I'm doing the drums, okay? And then they're all like kind of competently doing the guitars, but we're losing every song.
Yeah.
Because I cannot play drums to save my life.
Don't feel bad. So I've been a drummer since Technically, I was 10, I think, when I first. Okay, so a lot of years. Like I think 30 years. When I a total cocky asshole sat down on a drum kit on Rock Band and went straight to expert, and I shit the bed. So don't worry. It took some learning to be able for those skills to translate over, and they did. It got to a point where I could play every song on expert in Rock Band, but it took a while.
Yeah, I was getting dirty looks like right away. It was Christmas Day. My friend,
and you were
my friend
ruining,
got it. I was
ruining the band.
It's like, guys,
out of the band.
All right, so Rock Band, and then what else do I got here? Arkham Asylum.
Yeah,
Okay.
which we agree is the best licensed game ever made.
That's right, and I I was afraid of saying that at one point. I was afraid you were going to disagree with me, but then we both agreed. So it's like, this is a safe space now to say that.
That's good. That's in concrete, bud.
Yeah,
that's
okay,
the
good.
best licensed game ever made.
Yeah. All right. Uncharted 2, and then The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Last of Us at the end of the era, and then a couple others. This is on the PC side. Dragon Age Origins, Civ 5, Red Dead Redemption, Mass Effect 2, and Orange Box Portal. Portal and Portal 2.
Well, the whole Mass Effect series is this generation.
Well, 7, no, because I think Mass Effect 1 came out in 2007. Mass Effect, maybe you are right.
Yeah, no.
You are, yeah.
I almost bought, when I bought my 360,
yeah.
I bought it in 2009 because I just had a lot of money and I wanted to buy something, and I didn't have a 360, so I did. But I almost bought one to play Mass Effect because when I heard the soundtrack and I was like, holy shit, this sounds like 80s sci-fi. This sounds really,
and it does, yeah.
Yeah, so I almost bought an Xbox then for it, but I'm really glad I didn't, because at that exact same time is when all of the Red Ring of Death shit started. So I waited to buy an Xbox, and I still have the 360 I have is what they call the Falcon chipset. So it's an original 360 like chassis and motherboard, but it just has like a less hot processor on there, and they did some other thing to make it run, but it's still never red ringed, and so it's an original ass looking 360 that still works.
Okay, so that worked out.
Yeah.
All right, so the Mass Effect series, you're right, the entirety of the series, and again, has all those games, the Civilization series, Mass Effect series, the Orange Box, Portal, and Portal 2 coming out during that time.
Yeah.
Right, like these are things that were amazing in the moment and are still amazing 15 years later, or whatever you're looking at. So when I sum it all together, and it's like, man, if you were into AAA games, you had some really good stuff coming out at that time. Red Dead Redemption.
Call of Duty 4. Call of Duty 4 is the game I played on multiplayer more than any other game. Oh. In my opinion, they have been chasing that dragon ever since. Like, I know, like, multiplayer shooters has never been your bread and butter, but
yeah, never played Call of Duty 4. Played Call of Duty 1 during your era.
Yeah. There you go. So Call of Duty 4 introduced what multiplayer games still do to this day, where it's like you unlock shit. That's what it's all about. Like getting to that next level, when you get to that, when you see that bar, go over and you get a new gun, you're gonna sit there and play all night long. And it's a play loop that they figured out.
The dopamine hits.
Yeah, exactly. And it hits hard, and they've never quite gotten to that level again. But with the exception of the newer stuff, I played a little bit of that Warzone game with Danny. Yeah. He's a much bigger Call of Duty fan than I am. They lost me when they had that level where you just shoot up a bunch of civilians. And there's no reason. There's no redemption.
No
there's
yeah. I'm so glad we agree on that, because that's another one where I wasn't sure if you
look. I love violence.
Dude, we just did Let's Plays.
We play hours of violence. But like for me, like I genuinely don't love violence when it's like that. When it's like it's one thing to say, and I sound like a total fucking hypocrite, and that's fine. What are you gonna do? But like, obviously, something like Mortal Kombat is exploitative. It's literally exploitation. Like, give us money because we're doing this gore thing, then that's fine. But like that particular level in Call of Duty, all they needed to do was make it so that like there was some sort of a payoff or a reason why you committed that horrible atrocity, or allowed that horrible atrocity to happen in front of you while you hold a gun. But they didn't do that at all, and it's completely pointless. And it was in an era that came out. We've already had like 60 mass shootings under our belts by the time that game came out.
Yeah. Well, and that's the difference between Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat it's
cartoons.
Well, but they're also, if you buy into the universe, it's people who are consenting to a battle to the death in a tournament, as opposed to just a bunch of civilians just going about their daily lives being mowed down in a train station, whatever it is.
So for me to say it's distasteful garbage, which it is, and I'm a guy who loves John Waters' old movies.
No, I'm with you. It's really it's despicable.
Yeah,
and
that's the word for it, despicable.
Yeah. So anyway, that sucked. So this era is defined, in my opinion, by a bunch of really great AAA PC games that withstood the test of time. I don't want to say the invention, but certainly the sea change of indie games coming onto the scene, and then those games have withstood the test of time. The accessibility to be to buy games that you may have played in the past, but now you could get them cheap thanks to Steam Summer Sales.
Yeah.
And then all of the 3 console makers releasing a bevy of really, really great games. You talked about the Nintendo ones. Arkham Asylum, best licensed game ever, comes out during that time on console. Red Dead Redemption and the GTA games. Just like games that all these years later, if you're making best of lists or whatever, like all these games are on those lists.
Well, and all these games are getting sequels made today.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the problem of today's games.
Yeah, which is
and
part of
that's
the
why 2017 to 23 is not the best era of games.
I'll also to give you a little more kudoing of this era. One thing that you didn't mention, and it's a big one, is the 1080p revolution.
Oh,
to me, like the leap from going from 8-bit to 16-bit was huge. Going from 16-bit to 32 was way nuts.
3D
like
now.
you had to like refigure out how to play a video game.
Yeah.
And then everything was refined and improved. It's a big jump from PS1 to PS2. And then that, I believe, and this might be subjective, but the jump from PS2 to PS3, that era, was equally as big in terms of like, wow, graphics are getting crazy good. And then it stops. Like to me, like I can show you a PS3 game that'll play a native 1080p that if I said it was on a PS4, you would believe me.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So like the advancements, and then with this stuff, you get up to that uncanny valley business, which we're kind of in right now, where like things look obviously really good and realistic, but just weird enough to where it's not like full blown real.
Life, yeah.
We're like a good decade, maybe less, but we're that far out from like what I believe would be like the next really, really big graphical jump, which has got to be like photorealism.
Well, I would say photorealism, and also having lived in environments where if you're outside, there are like hundreds of people walking around, or if you're in a field like Ghost of Tsushima got a lot of credit because there'd be little floating leaves or around you when you're going through. There needs to be more of that.
Stuff.
Yeah, more of that.
I was blown away playing. So the recent Dead Space game. I usually put all my games on performance mode because I prefer the frame rate versus the resolution.
Yeah.
On that Dead Space game, like the second I did that swap and I saw all the volumetric lighting go away, I was
really
like,
great,
nope,
right?
nope, we're going resolution mode on this one.
And the first time, Portal 2 was the first time I saw volumetric lighting used in a really cool way. And it's like you want those next steps, and those are the next steps. Okay, so anyway, the combination of all these great games coming out, the accessibility of more of being able to get games from the past, and then new genres of games, specifically the indie game kind of versioning. Those are all the pluses. The minuses that I came up with were, one, toxicity from the MOBA community, toxicity in gaming in general, and Heavy Rain being released during this time,
which is the biggest travesty. Yeah, this is the biggest travesty of them all. Yeah. Well, I'll say this: you did surprise me. I was not expecting you to pick this deal.
Yeah, we surprised us both, Brian.
Well, yeah, you surprised us both. No, but I would trade you my era's unbeatable creativity for your era's accessibility. To me, those two things are like eye to eye in terms of how good they were in their respective eras and how important they were to why we think these eras are so fucking good. Yeah. So kudos on you, guy.
Yeah, we did it.
And kudos on you.
We did it.
For watching all this stuff. So yeah, those are our favorite eras of video games. Why don't you leave a comment and tell us what yours is, or tell us we're either all the way right or all the way wrong. Who cares? Who gives a shit? But interact, like, and subscribe.
Please do.
Tell your friends, and we're gonna come back with something sometime.
Oh, since we kind of came together at the end here, we should do a gentleman's handshake.
I agree.
To signify the.
Okay, so the hand up here, this represents my era, the PS2, and I'm gonna go. Let's go with the Wolf Pack.
Okay,
we'll go with the Wolf Pack here, and then down here's your era.
Oh,
and we'll go with
a reverse handshake.
We'll go with a reverse handshake. There you go.
Woo!
Enjoy.